When it comes to Shonen Jump villains, specifically the big bad antagonist of a specific arc, there are only a few that come to my mind that truly embody the idea of Black Air Force One energy. You can probably make an argument for any of the characters I'm going to bring up, but as of now, I only consider two characters to be quite literally built different. The first being Kid Buu from Dragon Ball Z, and the second being Kaido the Beast, the strongest creature in the world. Where other beloved or impactful villains are introduced through some kind of demonstration of their raw capabilities, plot twists, and so on and so forth. Kaido separates himself from this by jumping from a sky island, which is around 10,000 meters above the ground, as he just so happens to land in front of some familiar faces, the worst generation. The most he suffers is a splitting headache. The narrator goes on to give us some details on Kaido's history, which I'm going to read to give a bit more context. The man claimed he was searching for a place to die. He tasted defeat as a pirate on 7 occasions, and being caught by the Marines, or enemy ships, no less than 18 times. He was tortured time and time again, and lived as a prisoner, and finally, he attempted to unalive himself by jumping from a sky island. This is a man who challenged the Marines and the 4 emperors and was caught 18 times and enjoyed over 1,000 tortures. He was sentenced to death 40 times. When he was hanged, the rope snapped. When he was put under the guillotine, the blade cracked. When skewered, the spear broke. Ultimately, he sank 9 different prison vessels, meaning none of these people were able to kill him, and that included himself. His hobby is unaliving himself, and his name is Kaido, King of the Beasts. People say in a one-on-one fight, always bet on Kaido. Land, sea, and air, out of every living thing in the world, this pirate is said to be the strongest creature alive. Unlike other villains, Kaido's introduction includes him attempting to unalive himself for fun. And if I'm being honest, this is a hell of a first impression. Now, some time does pass before Kaido and the main protagonist of the series, Luffy, finally meet. And for the sake of context, he had just fired a blast breath at the mountain that Luffy's friends were on. Thinking they were dead, Luffy unleashes a barrage of attacks at this man, who ends up reverting to his base form without a scratch on him and proceeds to one-shot Monkey D. Luffy. Throughout his journey, Luffy has been through a lot of rough patches. Luffy fights a lot of powerful enemies, and he sometimes loses to them once or twice before he gets the salty run back. Even against Katakuri, Luffy was fighting an uphill battle for around 10 hours, but he never got one shot. I want to say that Luffy is not someone who, at least within the context of his own series, is easy to put down. To see him just beat Luffy through sheer brute force was mind-boggling at the time, and I cannot stress this enough. It's not easy to put Luffy down. Following the raid of Onigashima, we actually get to see what exactly makes Kaido such a raw villain. He fights Oden's 9 retainers, and while they did damage him, their attacks were still described by Kaido as cheap imitations. It's not until the worst generation shows up and one of the coldest entrances in anime history occurs that we get to see why Kaido is quite literally him. This man Kaido does not block. After rereading all of his fights, Kaido doesn't block a single attack and dodges only 2 attacks, arguably 3. Once when Luffy charges at him with a red rock, but he immediately punished Luffy. The second when he's getting attacked by Gum Gum Hydra and decides to flex on Luffy by revealing that up until that point he hadn't used advanced observation haki, better known as Future Sight. There is an anime only moment where he does dodge Zoro's flying dragon blaze, but the manga never shows him actually dodging, and Zoro even says he missed. Kaido takes every single attack without really having to put up his guard even when it will hurt him. As the fight progresses, and Kaido enters his Beast-Man hybrid form, he describes this encounter as fun, while the worst generation compare the situation to being in hell, and have no other choice but to separate him and Big Mom. As the battle unfolds and Luffy unlocks Advanced Conqueror's Haki, which is such a massive amp that he becomes the only person in the entire raid who can fight Kaido one-on-one at this point with a chance of winning. And Kaido sort of just knocks him out almost immediately afterwards. Sometime later, after being held off by Yamato, Luffy returns to the rooftop for his second salty run back against Kaido. And while the two of them say they are having fun, Kaido takes this up one step further and gets drunk. While this could normally be seen as some kind of nerf, Kaido seems to become more powerful while drunk, as even when he starts having mood swings, he seems to get the upper hand on Luffy a good number of times. One of which I spoke about earlier, where he dodges Luffy's Gum Gum Hydra by utilizing Future Sight for the first time since the fight began. Luffy has been using everything in his arsenal, including Future Sight, and he's still getting hit. Kaido has been holding back, and he's showing zero signs of slowing down. He still has a bloodthirsty drunk phase that nearly forces Luffy out of Gear 4 and leaves Luffy with virtually no other option other than ending the fight as soon as possible. Unfortunately, CP0 agent Guernica interferes in their fight, and Kaido gets an easy hit on Luffy, basically unaliving him. With all seemingly lost and the raid looking like a failure, as there really isn't anyone left that can fight Kaido, let alone in a healthy enough condition, Kaido starts blasting the opposition until he starts hearing a funny sound coming from the roof. In what I consider to be one of the greatest reveals in manga/anime history, we see this man, Kaido, get yoinked from the center of Onigashima onto the roof, where he gets absolutely ragdolled. He attempts to fire a blast breath at Luffy, who has basically become a cartoon character at this point, and gets hit with an immediate no-you, taking his own blast breath for the first time, which he just shrugs off. This entire fight is the reason why I consider Kaido to be quite literally him. Luffy, who has now been revealed to be the awakened mythical Zoan Devil Fruit user, human model Sun God Nika, who has the most ridiculous power in the world that Kaido even describes as something out of a comic strip. And Kaido just doesn't care. Luffy gets eaten by Kaido, inflates himself while inside, uses Kaido's own eyes and nose as an anchor to escape, becomes a giant, and uses Kaido as a jump rope, and yet none of this discourages Kaido. He tackles every insane thing that Luffy throws at him without the slightest bit of hesitation. Luffy becomes a giant, Kaido charges at him and bites him. Luffy uses him as a jump rope, Kaido blasts him away. At this point, it would be very common that the villain begins to second guess their abilities or show some kind of concern for the immediate power-up that the protagonist has gotten. Aizen from Bleach becomes frustrated when he sees that Ichigo's power far surpasses his own. Madara had to run away from Naruto and Sasuke after they got their Six Paths powers. Required to obtain his second Rinnegan, Cell gets so upset that Gohan is overpowering him that he decides to unalive himself along with the entire planet since he can't win. Kaido sees all of this tomfoolery and with a big smile on his face pretty much says he wants to see more. Luffy is literally grabbing lightning out of the sky, throwing it at him, and Kaido decides to rush forward instead of just dodging Luffy. He hits Luffy with one of the craziest combos I have ever seen and tells him that his Devil Fruit ain't shit, and the only thing that will conquer the seas is Haki. Luffy decides to end the fight by grabbing a hold of Kaido and reveals his trump card, the Bajorang gun, a massive fist larger than the island they are fighting on, and Kaido decides to just clash with it. Now, I will say that even though Kaido does lose the clash, he never once backs down from a single challenge that he was presented. He doesn't begin to sweat, he doesn't question his own power, he doesn't go looking for extra power or any way to get the upper hand on the opposition. He deals with it in the best way he knows how, which is by going absolutely unga bunga. I am not saying that he's the greatest villain ever written or the greatest villain in all of Shonen, but he has definitely left an insane impact worthy of the title, Strongest Creature in the World.